This is Hot Mike.
Hot Mike.
On the networks of WDAY. Here's Dom Izzo.
Tuesday morning show rolls on. Again, it's been an active realignment Tuesday. We've seen UTEP likely to accept its offer later today from the Mountain West Conference. Gonzaga is leaving the West Coast Conference and will join the Pac-12 in basketball. And then the most recent story from Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports is that FCS member Tarleton State, which has been eligible for D1, I think, for the last 2 years, is now being targeted for as the 8th Mountain West school. So the league wanted to get into Texas. Looks like they are going to do that. And not, again, as we mentioned with our last segment with Mike, not necessarily surprising in the least on that. Any updates, we'll pass it along as we roll on this morning. But I want to keep our next guest waiting too long. He's at practice as the University of North Dakota gets set for its matchup with North Dakota State. We visit every year. Game week happens with Tom Miller from the Grand Forks Herald. He'll be at the Dome on Saturday. I'll freely admit I was way off of my prediction of UND's win total. I think they've matched what I had, or I had them at 5. I can't remember. But what is the most surprising part to you? To me, it's offensive line. What stood out to you in the first 5 games?
Yeah, I think the offensive line just had such potential to be an absolute collapse, just because if you look at the guys who are there right now, if you would have told the 2023 staff, hey, you're going to roll with, Liam Beecher, Caleb Olson, Ben Bucks, this crew, he said, we've got no shot. So for all of that to really click against Iowa State and Montana, who knows what to take away from this last stretch of 3 games. But I think the Montana game was always the one that could flip the script, so to speak. I think beating Montana kind of reset some of the expectations, and you avoided some of the doomsday scenarios that weren't that crazy to concoct in your head that this season could really get off to a troubling start.
That comeback win, and we talked about it a couple days after it, Tom, of how they won that game. How much are they riding that momentum still in your mind?
Well, I think to some extent that they can lean on that to give them a little bit of confidence, because I don't know exactly what kind of confidence you take away from Idaho State, Murray State, San Diego. Those 3 aren't going to be bullet points in your FCS playoff resume by any means. But, I do think that the Iowa State Montana games gave that offensive line like, hey, we're creating some holes against some defenses that are highly thought of. And so that maybe you can build off of that.
Simon Runfo has played fantastic. There's another thing no one was counting on. What has he done in your mind that has impressed you or surprised, even maybe surprised the coaches, maybe more importantly, through this 5-game stretch to start the year?
I've been most surprised at just how opportunistic he's been. The passing game by no means is hitting on all cylinders, and people are happy with it. The thing that's kind of surprised me is that I think that Simon had hit a lot of his easy passes in practice, and I hadn't seen much of the deep ball. Well, it's kind of been opposite that I'm seeing in games here, is that the short stuff is he's had problems skipping balls to, quick outs to Bo Belquist, or little things underneath to Nate DeMontenac. They've had a hard time connecting on those, but it's almost been beneficial because teams have said, we're going to dare you to throw the ball. And UND's countered by saying, okay, well, we think our best receiver can beat you deep.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what they've hit on. So it's kind of surprised me that Simon has turned into this deep ball thrower, and he hasn't hit that short range stuff.
Bo is having an unreal start to the year. Kolpak was on yesterday saying he might be the best receiver in all of FCS. You've seen him his entire career. How is the elevated? Where is the elevated his game in your mind in 2024?
Well, it's funny. That's kind of why I'm at practice today is to chat with him and chat with the wide receivers coach, because what I want to know is was it organic, or was it, preconceived here that he was going to become a wide receiver that went from most of his career being like an 8 catches for 70 yards type of receiver for UND, to a 3 for 125 type receiver like he's been these last few weeks. He really hadn't been that deep threat all that consistently in his career. And now all of a sudden that's what he is. He's got, I think it was like 6 catches for over 40 yards when, that's more than he's had in his career of that distance. So, um, he's really elevated his game these last few weeks. And where would this team be without Bo Belquist? Absolutely the MVP of this team, irreplaceable.
The fact that he's I think in every game, correct me if I'm wrong, against the Bison, he's found the end zone too. Like this is. I know it's circled anyway in his family, but he has played some of his best games against NDSU as well.
Well, he's got 3 touchdowns against NDSU.
Yeah.
In the one game that he didn't score a
Oh,
touchdown,
yeah, the
he
big
had
run. Yeah.
4 for 102.
Yeah, the big game. Yeah.
So yeah, he's had he's been really productive against North Dakota State, no doubt.
And he loves playing the Dome. He's told me that as well. There's something to that. So I guess the logical question is, how do they do it here? They've done it in Grand Forks. How do they take that? Because you've seen it, the games down here have not gone well. How do they translate that to playing well in Fargo on Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to test the theory of there's this vibe that this is a new team, that it's a new offensive coordinator, it's a new era of guys who stuck through the changes of the offseason, and that made them a tighter, more cohesive unit. Um, does is it a different era? I think we'll see some answers to that against North Dakota State, because UND has really withered in the Fargo Dome, and what they looked like in the Alaris Center was completely different than what we've seen in Fargo, and to me a lot of that, UND is going to have to keep possession, um, because North Dakota has just really struggled to stop, especially the QB run game in Fargo. Oh, whether it was Trey Lance or Cam Miller, um, boy, UND has really struggled
Yeah.
with that. And I think it's a noise factor that in Grand Forks, maybe offenses don't get that extra split second to get off the ball ahead of time, and that seems to matter here in Fargo.
Isaiah Smith and Gavin Zebarth are not unknown commodities to NDSU, but how have they been so good? I know it equates to what the offensive line have done, Tom, but man, each of them have had dynamite starts so far in 2024.
Yeah, and I think some of it too is a sneaky part of that is Sawyer Seidel.
Yeah.
Emerging as a freshman, he didn't play last week, and so his availability will be a game time decision in Fargo. But the ability to kind of give 10 carries each has kept all three of those guys fresh. And I think what UND likes the most is that they're three very different skill sets. Gavin's going to run between the tackles, and Isaiah Smith's going to be the option in the passing game a lot of times. And Sawyer Seidel just provides kind of a combo of the two, but more of the home run hitting aspect. So I think the combination of those two guys has kept each other fresh, and I think that's been pretty huge. And I think just Isaiah Smith flies under the radar because he is very soft spoken. He came to the press conference after they scored 72 points, and I said, "You guys had 600 yards of total offense and 72 points. He said, what do you think?" He said, we did pretty good, I guess. Just one of those kids.
When you're watching the game Saturday, especially the way it started, I mean, I would just ask, how do you even recap what you saw Saturday of what they did?
Yeah, it was a lot to digest.
Yeah.
By the end of that game, you forget that Bo Belquist had 100 yards in the first quarter. Um, it looked to me like Murray State has some serious issues.
Yeah.
There was one play in the first half where I might have even typed it on Twitter, just like they're done. Murray State is done. They have no interest in tackling. This game is over. I just they kind of rolled over, and that's what you're susceptible to when you bring in 60 transfers.
Yep.
Is when things can go pear-shaped, they can really go pear-shaped. So, um, Murray State's got some issues. They've got a lot of areas they got to grow in, and North Dakota just pounced on it.
I know Brad wrote about this, that my trademark of the gauntlet begins now for UND's schedule, that I know they're not leaving the state of North Dakota, but they are playing a road game. They have the bye next week, and then it's Northern Iowa, trip to Youngstown. They still have the Jacks and the Coyotes at the end. So the story is going to be told, but this really, Tom, is the jumping off part to figure out where this team is going to lie, in my mind, in 2024.
Well, and we've talked about it for years, but has this program really answered the road woes question? Sometimes I'll kind of hint at how they've solved it here, and then you look back and it's like, well, they won in Terre Haute and they
Yep.
won in Murray.
Yep.
You know,
They won in
their
Macomb.
yeah, they won in
Right.
Macomb. Their
Yeah.
best road win is when Cole Davis blocked that punt in Youngstown,
Yes.
and Husman had a great day.
Yep.
That's probably their best performance. So there's certainly something to be said about the fact that North Dakota has to take a step forward by winning out of Dakota School.
Yep. I mean, last year they scared the heck out of USD, but then couldn't do anything offensively for the final half, 3/4 of that football game on the road.
Well, it was a Red Wilson
Yeah.
opening kickoff
Right.
that scored the only points. Offensively, UND on the road was not good a year ago. Northern Iowa, South Dakota didn't score a point. Um, and that's what I'm talking about when I
Yep.
talk about a new era. The post Tommy Schuster, post Danny Freund isn't a new era. We'll see.
Special teams has been huge. We're going to have Sean Kostic on the show on Thursday, and that, to me, going back, we talked about it when you were on, the game-winning field goal against Montana, what they did Saturday against Murray State. That's something that they've been able to hang their hat on no matter what, whoever's been coordinating over the last 3 or 4 years. Special teams, and that might be another thing. The Bison special team has been really good so far this year that may determine this football game on Saturday.
Yeah, I think, Sean Kostic, I don't know if he gets enough credit for what he consistently seems to be able to dial up. It was Red Wilson and Luke Skokina bringing back kickoffs for
Yeah.
touchdowns a year ago. CJ Siegel was successful
Yes.
in that role. They've been fine this year. Sawyer Seidel has had a number of times where he's kind of been one tackle away from breaking one. And they seemingly always block a punt. I think the X's and O's of it, they're pretty good. They've had issues from time to time still with kickoffs going out of bounds. They've had some punt issues. So that their specialists still have room to grow. But in terms of what you can dial up, I feel like North Dakota seemingly wins that matchup consistently. Now, North Dakota State, probably has better protections or is maybe more ready for things than a Murray State. I'm sure North Dakota's going to have something prepared here.
Let me ask you before I let you go: is there a guy or guys that under the radar that have performed? You mentioned offensive line that have just been like, wow, did not count on that. You mentioned the O-line that have just surpassed your own expectations for what you've seen through the first 5 games of this year.
Yeah, I think Devin Embry, kind of at cornerback, coming from the junior college ranks, and then he was a good backup. And late last year, I thought he's their best corner right now. And now, as this first half of the season has played out, it's like, oh, he's playing at an all Missouri Valley Conference level at minimum. He's at the point. He dropped interception last week, but if he continues to put up a couple more stats like that, he's going to be in that All American conversation. He's been that good. And then offensively, it's Caleb Olson.
Yeah.
He was completely off my radar a year ago, and when I heard that he was slated to be a starter this year, I thought, whoa, this is bad news for North Dakota. And now he's grading out at an all conference level from what I'm hearing from coaches. So that his emergence has blown me away.
I have one last thing I was going to ask you. The I don't want to say slow start, but how the games with Idaho State, San Diego, and Murray in your mind, is that just indicative of the team they were playing, or is there something more worrisome of how the games have started in those 3 games?
Oh, I think there's definitely some worrisome, just the fact that it isn't teams marching either. It seems to be that teams have found one thing each game that it's like, well, we're going to do this play, and we know that it's going to be an epic collapse, and it's a 70-yard score, it's a 60-yard score. I felt like that was, and part of that, maybe to North Dakota's credit, is that San Diego and Murray State both came into Grand Forks coming off a bye week. And so the fact that they maybe had something dialed up that they could drop and have it hit. There's also the fact that North Dakota starts a true freshman and a sophomore safety starting their first year. And when it comes to checks and when it comes to making sure you're in the right position, there was probably bound to be some schematic problems. But I feel like that's what's hitting early in these games is that these teams are coming in and they're saying, we've seen on tape that we can hit this once, and now we're going to shoot our shot. We hit our shot. And I guess maybe to North Dakota's credit, they've seemingly fixed some of those things by second half.
You're the man. Great stuff as always. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday, bud. Thanks for doing this morning.
Absolutely. Next time I might shave and have a computer.
Thanks, bud. We'll talk to you later. Tom Miller joining us to the Grand Forks Herald. He's covering, get a story on Bo Belquist. We'll have Elliot, his dad, will join us tomorrow on Hot Mic after the unbelievable start to the season and wrapping up what's been, it will be a Hall of Fame career at the University of North Dakota for Bo Belquist. We'll take a break. We come back. You'll hear from the Wolves about the trade of Karl Anthony Towns and my thoughts on Pete Rose and the Hall of Fame. Hot Mic returns on this Tuesday morning. We're back after this.